Hello and welcome. My name is Jess, and you're listening to Legaltini, your very own sip of law school. The goal of this podcast is to give you just a taste of what it's like going to law school. Whether you're already in school, considering it, have a loved one currently experiencing the fun that is law school, or you just want to follow my journey, I'm so glad you're here. You can also follow me on Instagram at legaltini_podcast or check out my website, legaltini.com. If you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to rate and review below. Grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Hello and welcome back to Legaltini. I am so excited that you're here, and honestly, I'm so excited that I'm here. Last semester was a real doozy. I needed to take a step back from podcasting because I was really grinding hard at school, which is awesome and why I'm here, and totally acceptable to have semesters that really force you to be head down learning. However, that meant that I needed to take my own advice and cut out things that were not my priority. One of those things was recording podcasts, even though I really love it, and honestly, it's kind of like a little therapy session for me when I record them. Is anyone else a verbal processor? Anyways, I'm back this semester for my fourth 15-week sprint semester of law school. And since we're just getting back into the semester, I wanted to share what I've been doing to get organized, get acquainted with the topics I'm learning about, and make a plan for how to tackle the semester. As always, I've been focusing a lot on my perspective and mindset and headspace while I'm jumping back into this semester. I don't really feel rested or ready to grind through another semester. Winter break is just never long enough, and I still feel tired from all the travel and fun, and even though it was really lovely, I got to see my family and we traveled, we spent more nights away than we did here, and so I don't feel rested or recovered yet. And so I'm just still sort of exhausted. So I'm jumping back in before I'm ready, and I'm trying to catch a current that will pull me forward and get some momentum going, because sometimes you don't feel quite ready, but it's time to jump and you just have to go. You have to move. So I actually started school this semester about a week and a half ago, but it's taking me some time to get organized. I know, who am I? Usually I feel so prepared before the semester starts, but here we are. I'm organizing on the fly, which in some ways is actually nice because I already know my professors a little bit and what they're looking for, and cold calls and things like that, so I can tailor my plans to each class and do less modifying on the back end, which is maybe kind of a great way to do it. So I've got a few parts to my organization. One of them is organizing my tools and sort of getting all my binders and books and my digital workspace and all of that stuff sort of organized and planned out. And then I also have a study plan for each class, as far as when I'm going to read, when I'm going to start outlining, sort of, a plan of attack, if you will. And then I've got self-care planning and relationship planning and making sure that I have those things prioritized and worked into my plan and my schedule. And then lastly, I want to talk about perspective, because I always want to talk about perspective because it's such an important piece of the mind game that is law school. So let's get started. Step 1 is organize your tools. So this is going to depend heavily on your professors and what they allow in class versus don't allow, and what your preferences are. Some people really love to handwrite, some people really love to type. It's going to very much depend on what you're allowed to do and what you prefer to do. I have found that I actually prefer typing, and I've done better in the classes where my professors allow us to have our laptops and can type our notes as we go, because I think I'm just able to get more information down, and for whatever reason that just works for me. So what I do is type my notes as I'm reading before class in preparation for class, and then I can use my laptop in class to just supplement those notes and sort of add in, and I use a different color text while I'm typing, so I change it to blue so that when I'm looking back at it and I'm outlining and I'm asking questions, I can see what I wrote down during class versus what I wrote down during reading. So that's sort of how I approach my in class, but I have a few professors that I have 2 professors this semester who require us to handwrite notes during class. We're not allowed to have our laptops out, which is fine. I just have to sort of tailor my approach in those classes so that I can still get down everything that I need. So what I do for those classes is I type my notes still while I'm reading in preparation, and then I print them out, bring them to class, annotate them while I'm in class. So I'm actually handwriting onto my notes. And then after class, I add those notes into my digital copy or my Word document in a different color. So then I kind of get the same end result, but it takes me a little bit longer. And maybe that is theoretically helpful because then you're going back through the information again and retyping it all. But I find that it's just a time suck for me. It doesn't actually help me to master it more because I'm not really learning it in that way. I'm just like regurgitating and retyping. So to me, it feels like a waste of time. But to some people, that might actually be a good review. So whatever it works for you is what you should do, obviously. So I have a combination of binders and using my digital tools that I have. And I need both, even though that feels kind of silly and redundant to have 2 sort of like places where I house things. But I also have a written planner and a digital planner because I'm just maniacal like that, and I need to like see it written down in different ways. I need to like have the physical excitement of crossing something out on a list, but then I also need it to be digital so it's flexible so I can move it around. So sometimes a combination of a lot of things is what works for you. Don't feel stuck in one category or feel like you can only do one thing. I actually jump around quite a bit. So in doing that, though, it can get cluttered easily if I let it. So I have to make sure that I'm managing that in a smart way. And so I have to keep everything sort of free of clutter and tidy, because if I don't feel tidy on the outside, I don't feel tidy on the inside. And so if I'm like, my desk is cluttered, my life is cluttered, my brain feels cluttered. So the more that I can keep things sort of minimalized, but also organized, the better for me. So that's really it on tools, because everything's going to be so specific to what classes you're taking and how your professors or how you prefer to do it. Some professors don't care at all. Some really care a lot. It's just going to depend on the specific professor that you have. But the next thing, and the tools sort of lead into this, is creating a study plan. And this is what I have digitally. So in my Google Calendar, which I'm obsessed with, I have every section of reading prepared and planned in advance so that I don't have to wake up in the morning and wonder, what should I do today? Because that feels like reinventing the wheel every day. And that's just too much work. So I create a sort of like a plan for each week that is allowed to be modified. So I have in my Google Calendar repeating events every week that say, during this time block, I'm reading for evidence. During this time block, I'm reading for constitutional law. And so I have these like 3 or 4 hour time blocks, depending on how long it generally takes me to read that content. And I can scoot it around. I can move it to a different day. I can cut it in half. I can modify it. But then I already have sort of like a template for each week so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel every day. So that is the basis of my study plan. And then I set goals that I want to achieve. So like I'm really focusing on using flashcards in my evidence class because there's so much to remember and I just simply won't be able to cram it all into my brain at the end of the semester. So I am trying to weekly do my flashcards in that class because that's what's going to work for that. And then there's different ones for each class and you can kind of come up with whatever works for you, but you have to allow yourself some flexibility. You have to be okay with saying, well, I'm exhausted. I need to, instead of finishing this reading tonight and staying up till whatever hour, I need to go to bed and I need to wake up early. And that's okay. And life is about flexibility and we have to embrace that if we want to be successful, because life is simply not going to come at you in straight lines and in organized files. It's just not going to. Can confirm that it does not. So we have to be flexible, but we also, I guess I speak for myself, I have to have a plan because otherwise I feel completely chaotic and scattered, and that just isn't a good headspace for me. The next part is about self-care and relationships, and I think that this is kind of the secret sauce of survival in law school. And I know everybody talks about it and yada yada, but you gotta know, if you're in law school, you know this, and if you're thinking about law school, you're gonna know this. It is so much harder to do it than to say you're gonna do it. I can even schedule self-care into my calendar, and I can schedule a date into my calendar, and then inevitably something will come up and I'll be like, oh, I'll do it later, or oh, can we reschedule, or ooh, can we push that to this day? And it is so hard to force yourself to take breaks and to force yourself to recharge, because there is always something that you need to be doing. There is always something you feel behind on. There is always something that absolutely requires your attention, and you have to be able to say no and go do your life stuff. And that is really, 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 really hard. But it is worth it, because if you don't take those breaks, and if you don't exercise, and if you don't socialize, and if you don't nurture your relationships, that is going to probably blow up in your face. That sounds really scary. Maybe not blow up in your face, but it's not going to be healthy for you. And law school is about balance, and you really have to find a way that you can recharge but stay on top of things. And a lot of that is communicating with the people around you. That's what I have found to be the most helpful, is letting my mom know, or letting my parents know that, like, I'm swamped right now, so they're not sitting around wondering if I like have fallen off the face of the planet. It's a lot about communicating with your significant other, if you have one, about like, hey, I am gonna have a pretty brutal week. Let's plan on dinner Wednesday, because that's the time that I have, and that is what I can offer. And chances are you have a supportive relationship, and they're going to be like, absolutely, of course, what can I do to help? Like my boyfriend is now, where he is cooking all of our meals, and he's incredible, and I'm very grateful, because I will just not eat, because who has the time to do that? It's funny, isn't it? Law school makes you crazy. But also socializing, and like making time to interact with your classmates in a way that is not just revolving around law school, because these are relationships that are going to continue to be important to you as you move through life, and it's important to nurture them now while you can. Last thing about sort of prepping for the semester that I just wanted to pop in here is familiarizing yourself with the courses before you start, or even just within the first few weeks. So absolutely read your syllabus. I am like such a syllabus queen. I think that there are often a lot of little gems in there where they'll sort of allude to things that they really care about, that are important to them. I'm talking about the professor. But also little things that if you ask them in class and it's in the syllabus, the professor is going to look at you like you have three heads. So don't be that person. And also it can reduce stress later when you're like, oh my gosh, what is the structure of the exam? Or, oh, what do I have to do for like this specific thing that they require us to do? Like some of my classes require you to submit a journal at the end, or there's just little things like that that you don't want to be caught unaware of. And so a simple read of the syllabus, which literally takes like 5 minutes maybe, is worth it at the beginning, just to roadmap your course. And then you don't, get stuck sort of at the end being surprised by something. Also, if you can find a course outline, so someone who took the class before you, or even just commercial outlines are available online. You can get them for free. Just Google it. Just reading through to get an idea of where you're going and what topics you're going to be learning about. It just helps you to sort of, as you're learning stuff, you're plugging it into a framework instead of just like, okay, now I've received this interesting information, and now I've received this other sort of seemingly random information, and I'm not sure how they relate to each other. It helps me a lot to have a framework of the course so that I can plug those things in and see where I am on this sort of like larger journey. So that's it as far as preparing. I've talked a lot in other podcasts about this, and so you can go back and listen to those ones that have a little bit more about how to create a study plan that works for you, and self-care and all of that stuff. But really jumping back in here before I feel ready, I think that perspective, oh, and I love perspective, I love talking about this, is so, so, so key. And I think that it depends obviously on each person and where you're at in your journey with yourself and with life and law school and yada yada. But I think for everybody, we can all agree that coming back to your why statement and coming back to the sort of original purpose that you're here is really key. Because when you remember why you're here, the stress and the anxiety and the busy and the chaos sort of fades away, and you're like, okay, I remember why I'm doing this and why this is worth it and why this hard work is going to, in the end, really serve me. And remembering that and recalling that you decided to be here, you are doing this. Actually, my spin instructor, I've been taking biking classes. She said something the other day that really resonated with me. She said, you are riding the bike is not riding you. And I don't know, maybe that means nothing to you, and that's fine if it doesn't. But to me, that just felt so much like a parallel to law school, where sometimes it feels like the middle of a spin class where I'm dying and out of breath and I'm so sweaty and I'm, I surely think I'm going to fall off the bike and die. It kind of has a parallel to law school for me, where sometimes you're just in it and you are grinding and you think this is how I die. Law school is how I die. But it's not, because you're riding the bike is not riding you. And so don't let law school ride you. Yes, it's hard, and yes, you're putting in tons of work, but it's for a purpose, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It is not forever. It's temporary pain. Which feels really real. But it's temporary pain for a goal. And you can do it. You really can. One of my very favorite books is called Growth Mindset. I've talked about it before, but it truly changed my perspective on learning. So if you haven't read it, run, don't walk. I mean, go get this book. I just really appreciated the difference between thinking about myself in a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset says, I am not a math person, or I am not an athlete, or I am only good at this sort of select group of things. But growth mindset says you can literally be good at anything you want to be good at if you just practice and just put in the work and believe that you can do it. So that is what I'm going into this semester with, the growth mindset, and just knowing that I am capable and so good at doing whatever it is that I want to do, because I know I'm willing to put in that work. And I know that I am willing to make an effort for things that I'm really passionate about. So that is it for today's episode. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that I'm here and have this opportunity to share my experience and let you know what it's like going through law school, because sometimes it's not that fun, but also sometimes I feel so much gratitude and honor that I get to be here doing this when I know that this is not an opportunity that everybody gets to do. So join me in being grateful and seeing the good in the world and seeing the good that's around us, because sometimes that is all that can keep you sane. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.